Okay, so hey guys, and welcome back to another weekly fighting roundup. And so if you are new around here and you haven't yet subscribed, please do so. Like video if you do need like video, and let's get straight into it. So going in, of course, we're going to be starting off with the boxing news. And so Hussein will fight November 8th. Laws Marksby versus Kissionia. Rogers and Lloyd Taylor Jr. will fight November 22nd. Fiaz is cleared to fight, which personally for me is really nice to see. Obviously there was a lot that seemingly went on behind the scenes for him to actually be able to get cleared. Everything with the fight getting pulled on the night of the fight versus Baker due to some betting that's very, minimal knowledge of what we've actually been told of what happened. But all I know is that he's cleared to fight, and as the person he was my first ever interview, it is very nice to see. Stringer has joined Boxer. Kelly versus Ryan will fight December 7th. That was put down before it actually got announced that it was cancelled, so that won't be happening anymore. Arum has said Bivol versus Beterbiev won't happen until October 2025. That is because he believes that Riyadh season won't be happening in Saudi Arabia. The Riyadh season events won't be happening outside of Riyadh season, so that means that he doesn't believe the fight will end up happening. Do I think that's going to happen? Probably not. I think it probably will be made before that. Eddie Hearn has said that you shouldn't trust what he's saying because he's not getting his facts right and everything like that. And it still seems like Riyadh season is going to carry on, whether or not that's during Riyadh season in Saudi or if that's other events outside of Saudi. Across the UK, across the world, like the huge events have been being put on. So I'm not too sure if I believe whether or not it will happen all the way in October next year. Hopefully not for a fan's perspective, but we will have to wait and see. Malone has joined Queensbury. Gardi Magomedov is set to fight La Cruz in December. Jonas may fight Habazian in December and then probably Mayer in a rematch next year. Khalif is turning pro. She was the fighter who brought up a lot of stir during the Olympics due to the chromosomes, the XY chromosomes, her fighting in the female rankings during the Olympics and winning gold, and now she's turning pro, so it's going to be interesting to see how that journey with her goes, and I'm sure she's going to get a lot of negative press with every fight she has, but she's doing her thing, and like I say, she's turning pro now, and we will have to wait and see how far she is able to go. Coley has joined Queensbury at the heavyweight division. He's now moved up to the heavyweight division from Bridgerweight and has joined Queensbury. And it's interesting what's happened with Coley. Obviously, when he was with Matchroom, he was built up, hyped up, and really made as a big name for Matchroom. And then he went over to Boxer, and that was still a big deal for him. But then, he got some more 50-50 fights, and then, of course, he had the loss to Billum Smith, and he looked like he was poorer, but then he moved up and fought at Bridgerweight versus Rosansky, and that was a great performance for him, a great win for him, and people were thinking perhaps with the new team in which he has, perhaps he's looking better, perhaps he's still got a new weight category, perhaps it's not the end of him yet, but now he's very quickly jumped from Boxer to Queensbury, and that's being and joining the Queensbury stable, in which is very, very stacked in the heavyweight kind of side of things at the moment. But like I say, it is interesting to see how he is just kind of siding away from Boxer when Boxer were really putting him on quite a high pedestal and was still getting in big fights and still letting him main events and things like that. And it's going to be interesting to see what kind of path he goes down with Queensbury, what fights he gets made. I'm sure there are plenty of very good heavyweight fights there to be made, but I'm just going to be also intrigued to see how he deals with making the heavyweight limit, or the heavyweight weight. Wallace will fight Wellham December 11th. Inoue will fight Goodman December 24th, and that's, in my opinion, a great fight. In my opinion, probably the best fight Inoue could have had in the super bantamweight division, and right on Christmas Eve, it's going to be a Christmas Eve banger, I'm sure of it. And Goodman, somebody who I had the pleasure of speaking to on this channel, over a year ago now. To see the way he's progressed to now be fighting, in my opinion, the pound for pound #1 fighter in the world is just great to see how he's worked hard to earn this opportunity and has now finally been given it, and in a division in the super bantamweight division in which you don't really get loads of opportunities unless you are fighting the likes of like a Nue. And yeah, he's worked hard and he's got himself here, and it's going to be a great show, I'm sure of it. And I can't wait, of course, always to see a Nue fight. Estrada has retired. Quite surprising, to be honest. I mean, there wasn't really too much information as to why she retired. I think possibly she just kind of fell out of love with the sport, and it happens often. You have to be, of course, 100% locked in to be able to compete at the highest of high levels, in which she was doing as the undisputed champion, coming off a big win versus Valle, and yeah, she was kind of seemingly flying quite high, but she just seemed like she didn't want any more. She'd achieved so much in her career, of course, 26-0, quite a surprising retirement, but now the belts have become vacant, and I'm going to speak a bit more about them in just a moment. Heiser versus Castillo, Bermetta versus Ospino, and Merry will fight November 22nd. De La Hoya wants Ortiz versus Spence Jr., which, to be honest, is a great fight, but we'll have to wait and see if it ends up happening. And, of course, Spence Jr. is tied up with Fundora's purse bids and everything like that. Well, Fundora wants him to fight Spence Jr. and, other things as well. Rodriguez is rumoured to fight Chocolatito February 22nd. Ennis is rumoured to fight Ortiz February 22nd. So that is a great card that is seemingly being shaped up. Eddie Hearn talked about this being possibly the biggest Riyadh season card made so far, and with them two fights, they are great fights, of course. Like I just mentioned, Ortiz Jr., De La Hoya wants him versus Spence Jr., but Ennis would be a great fight as well, and so it would be about time that Ennis fights one of the biggest names in his division, and Rodriguez as well against Chocolatito, of course. Rodriguez seemingly kind of killing off the three kings of the, the best fighters from that one era in the lower weight divisions. But it would be sad to see Chocolatito go and get destroyed versus Rodriguez, but it would be a great fight, another great name to have on Rodriguez's resume as well. So far so good for the shaping of this February 22nd card, and I'm excited to see and hear, how it progresses. Of course, these are just rumours so far. Williams has joined Queensbury. Ingram will fight November 22nd. Fetty will fight November 8th. Akmedalia versus Castro. Clark versus Mosquera. Cully versus Hughes. And Ferreira versus Buderza will fight December 14th. And a decent little card there, to be fair, from Matchroom. And in Monaco as well. It's nice to see them putting on another show there. And Akmedaliev, nice to see him back fighting. It seemed like he was waiting around for quite a while to see what was happening, if he was getting the fight with Inoue or not. But it's nice to see, even though perhaps it's not a huge opponent, a huge name, he's still wanting to get back fighting now. After, of course, finding out what's happened with Inoue versus Goodman, and Clark versus Mosquera, I think is going to be a good fight. It's nice to see Clark getting more opportunities outside of the UK, and then Cully versus Hughes as well. Hughes is pretty much just shown he is going to fight anywhere and will fight anyone, and he's coming off a very big stoppage win himself, so it's going to be interesting to see how he deals with Cully, who perhaps isn't riding the best of momentums in his career as of recent. Kelly versus Ryan is off. Valle versus Lopez will be for the vacant WBC minimum weight world title. So, like I say, Estrada's titles have very quickly become vacant and very quickly have been decided to be fought for. And this Valle versus Lopez fight really hasn't been pushed or really hasn't been announced in many places. It's not even on BoxRec or anything like that. But nonetheless, the WBC vacant now minimum weight title will be on the line, and Valle getting basically just gifted another title fight out of not really too much, just because she is the second biggest name in the division. Bellotti versus Gomez Jr. was cancelled, which was very interesting. You could see Bellotti was fuming with what happened and had a lot to say about it, which, to be honest, is smart. It's gonna bring eyes on to the fight a bit more when it probably will get remade again. It's going to fuel things a bit more, and it's going to make it more entertaining. And we went, perhaps it did weaken the actual cards for Catchall vs Progress, which in my opinion it definitely did, with it being off, but it was still bringing more eyes on it because Bellotti was having a lot to say. And I mean, I don't really know what happened with Gomez Jr., why he pulled out on like a few hours before the fight, but nonetheless, like I say, now it probably has more hype than before. Gudino won by TK in round 1 versus Cox. Luna won via KO in round 2 versus Gonzalez. Griffiths won via KO in round 3 versus Bose. Garcia won via KO in round 2 versus Villegas. Flores won via unanimous decision versus Ramos. Canas won via unanimous decision versus Cruz. Flores won via KO in round 1 versus Olivo. Sanchez won via KO in round 4 versus Palomeras. And Flores, Gucci Mane being put on another big stage by Golden Boy, and a nice little Wednesday card. But his opponent Olivo really didn't come to fight, I believe, and was a lot smaller in weight, and it was a very easy picked opponent fight for Flores, in which Golden Boy are very keen to constantly pick opponents for their fighters to be able to get nice, impressive looking wins. But yeah, it's not really going to develop him any much more by doing that. Whitworth won via points versus Orsagi. Krollo won via TK round 1 versus Graso. Clark won via points versus Pawlowski. McGrail won via points versus Morris. Bostan won via TK round 3 versus Somariva. McCormack won via unanimous decision versus Herrera. Flint won via unanimous decision versus Hatton. Catterall won via unanimous decision versus Progress to remain WBC International Super Lightweight Champion. And to speak a bit about this card and some of the fights, quite a few people which I've had the pleasure of speaking to on this. Crawler, a very good first round stoppage by him, and somebody who, like I said, I've had the pleasure of speaking to, and is getting himself away from being in his brother's shadow, and these impressive first round eyes on you stoppages are definitely going to be the right way to go to do that. Clark, another very good points victory for himself, again staying active and winning well. Sad to see Morris lose, but was in a good fight versus McGrail. Bostan, a beautiful shot that he landed on Somariva, and seemingly took the fight on short notice without too much of a camp. The way he was landing his shots was very nice to see, and an impressive performance. And hopefully now we will see, if not the Ishmael Davis fight next, a tough step up in an opponent for himself. McCormack, a good, comfortable unanimous decision versus Herrera, nothing crazy realistically from him. Flint, that unanimous decision versus Hatton was a good fight. It was another good fight. The first one was a good fight, this one was a good fight, and it was perhaps another close one, but you did definitely know that Flint won. And as Eddie Hearn said, Hatton hasn't really developed. He still looks the same as he did in that last fight. He hasn't really changed too much, and perhaps that's the team that he has around him because of course, having his family around him all the time and things like that. I don't necessarily know if that's going to help too much. Perhaps it's a skill level, perhaps he's too young. There is a lot of questions, but Flint again putting on a good performance. Hatton still there to fight, still having certain successes at times, but there are still very many fundamental issues in which Hatton, would have to develop on. And of course, I just don't necessarily know how well he has dealt with the name of course, Hatton, having that much pressure on him. It's just going to be tough for anybody. And yeah, it seemingly at the moment he has found his level, and it's going to be interesting to see where he moves on to next. Possibly not on the bigger shows anymore. Catterall, though, was in a good fight versus Prograis. Perhaps it was a bit more of a tougher fight in which, certain people may have thought, but perhaps myself would have thought. I mean, I got my prediction right saying it would be a unanimous decision. I didn't realistically think that Prograis would be able to drop him, but Catterall did well. He fought well. He always fights well. I think he was timing his shots a bit better, timing the shots to lead Prograis onto a bit better. He did that well versus Taylor in that second fight, but he did it a lot better versus Prograis, and Prograis was wasting quite a lot of shots, and Catterall perhaps wasn't. I still don't think Catterall is a crazily well-rounded fighter, but was having a lot of success again off an excellent jab, in which he definitely does have, and a good win in the end for him, in which he definitely deserved them. 2 knockdowns in round, I believe it was 9. It was definitely what he needed, and was pretty much a game changer and a high output where he was able to keep his work rate going throughout the whole fight again, and showing that he's able to fight around the top guys, and again having another close fight. He's seemingly always in close fights at this point, Catrell, but now probably will get progressed on, possibly will get a world title fight next. Eddie Hearn talked about Hitchens versus Parra, the winner, like I mentioned in my prediction. That probably would be the most likeliest fight to happen next. He also mentioned Teofimo Lopez, but I just don't really personally think that fight will probably end up happening, or at least for the moment. So, yeah, that's progression on for him, and Prograis seemingly wants to move into BKFC, which, to be fair, with the power that he's shown, just to be able to knock down Catrell from a jab, he definitely can do that and definitely has the capabilities to do that. And so it'll be interesting to see how he is around that. Perhaps he is retiring from boxing now. Moving on, Kaza Markiewicz won via split decision versus Wheeler. Williams won via TKO in round 8 versus Williams. Forrest won via unanimous decision versus Newman. Vasquez won via stoppage round 4 versus Taylor to become IBF WBA Super Featherweight Champion. Metcalf won via unanimous decision versus Yoshida to become IBF World Bantamweight Champion, and a weird fight that. I mean, I got my prediction right again. I've had a good week with predictions this week, but yeah, I got it right. But yeah, it was weird. Metcalf didn't really seem to be landing anything clean. Was the more aggressive, you knew that would be the case, but Yoshida definitely was landing the better shots. Metcalf was trying to keep her out of range a bit. Was having a little bit of success from that from time to time, but was messy, very inaccurate in her work, inaccurate with her work. Footwork was horrible, really. Didn't really land too much clean. Seemed like Yoshida had a lot of success when she did land clean, even though, like I say, it was less of an output than that of Metcalf. But Metcalf was missing a lot, and yeah, in general, just looked sloppy, looked messy. Yoshida looked sloppy and messy herself, to be honest. She looked unsure when she was coming in, and in general was a poor fight from both fighters. And I mean, now Metcalf is this world champion, which I just don't necessarily know how good of a fight it was, but I think in the bantamweight division there are fights there to be made in which are going to be tough matchups for Metcalf, and it's not the best performances from either, in my opinion. Moving on, Forol Jor won via TK round 1 versus Zubenko. Huveling won via TK round 2 versus Blinov. Mortensen won via KO round 2 versus Miguel Barishvili. Zara won via KO round 2 versus Ari Zara. Forzand won via unanimous decision versus Nuki to remain WBC and WBO World Bantamweight Champion. And I got my prediction right again for that one. And was another seemingly vintage performance from Forzand. There's not really too much tape on it, to be completely honest, but like I say, it seemed like it was another comfortable victory for herself, where perhaps she was not really standing and trading quite as much as what she normally does, because she did seem to respect that Nuki was able to have success if she was able to do that, because Nuki was confident doing that. But yeah, again, Forzand having success, I would love to see her now go on to try and unify that, or go undisputed, but we'll have to wait and see. She has a bit of a fan base there in Denmark now built up. It's not a crazily big fan base or anything like that, but there is one there. And like I say, I would like to see her move on to something like that now. Moving on now to the MMA news though. Fak Redinov won via decision versus Leo. Nor Diev won via decision versus Silva. Basharat won via decision versus Hugo. Nezuchukwu won via KO in round 1 versus Barnett. Magomedov won via submission in round 3 versus Ferreira. Rebecki won via decision versus Orolabai. Neil won via KO in round 1 versus Dos Anjos. Aslan won via KO in round 1 versus Sakara. Magomedov won via KO in round 2 versus Petrosian. Murphy won via decision versus EJ. Ankalaev won via decision versus Rakic. Shimaev won via submission in round 1 versus Whitaker. Topuria won via KO in round 3 versus Holloway to remain UFC featherweight champion and also become BMF UFC champion. And to speak about this card, UFC 308, I definitely think it lived up to the hype in which it had around it, even with the likes of Dagan versus Volkov rematch not being on it. It still lived up to a hype of a great card. And I suppose starting off with some of the highlight things from it, I mean, and behind it, loss was a weird one. Everybody loves Chris Barnett in the UFC. He's going to bring entertainment, whatever happens. But the fact that he injured himself just by jumping around at the start of the fight, before the fight even started, in the announcements of the fight, is something that you're never really going to see. But it is a very much a Chris Barnett thing to happen, and it's sad to see him lose via stoppage. But there is a name now, a new name in the heavyweight division in Nez Chukwu, so we have to see how he progresses now, getting past a name like Barnett. Magomedov, that submission was good, very good versus Ferreira. I actually think he is a very good name. Obviously, he lost versus Strickland and has been coming back since then, but I still think he is a good name in the division, and I think he's somebody who can definitely give a lot of people trouble. And then Rebecki versus Rollaby was a great fight. It was labelled one of the fights of the year, and yeah, it definitely was a great fight. The fact that Rollaby was able to fight after the eye being super swelled up after the first or second round, and then be able to carry on and still give so much and still make it to a split decision, and at the end there was just blood everywhere, and Rollby looked like he was hurt at one point, and then he got him. Then he got Rebecki onto his back and was having success there, and they were just slugging it out, and that's what the makings of one of the best fights of the year is. That's what has to happen, and that's what happened, and yeah, it was very entertaining to see. And there's always, fights like that on the big pay-per-view on the cards. Neil, that KO versus Dos Anjos. It was sad to see Dos Anjos lose, but I think it would have been sad to see either of them lose. But, via KO stoppage, perhaps that might be the end of Dos Anjos' career. I don't necessarily know if he retired or not, but I think it definitely could be. Magomedov, that KO was so crazy. It was creative, unseen before, a new move in the UFC games, I'm sure now, and yeah, the spinning back fist to then follow it up by another kind of spinning back fist. I don't even know what you call it and how you kind of describe it, but yeah, it was again him developing on, him moving on. The fact that he called out Adesanya was quite funny, saying he hasn't fought a ranked opponent yet, Magomedov, but he's creating entertainment. He's calling himself the pirate of the UFC, and his eye definitely makes him look, of course, like a supervillain. And I'm locked in to see how he moves on now. Of course, we would like to see him with a wrestler next. Maybe not for entertainment value, but just to see how he is dealing with that test. Murphy versus Ige was a close fight. I think Murphy possibly did edge it. It was a very close fight. Ige is always in close fights, not for a fight in the featherweight division, and Murphy has been hyped up a lot by the UK media, and I would love to see him kind of progress into a top 10 opponent now, and that was a tough fight for him. He's a good creative striker who can wrestle well, but Ige was having a lot of success, and so we'll have to wait and see, like I say, how Murphy does dealing with a top 10 opponent next. Ankalaev, it was a decision. It wasn't really creating any hype for himself. Rakic is a very tough guy to beat, and Frank Ankalaev, it was going to be always difficult to get him out, and I'm sure he probably was overlooking him, thinking of the Pereira fight. But Pereira, I think I saw the clip of him sleeping after the fight when they were announcing the winner. That was quite funny. But yeah, like I say, as he's trying to stake a claim for him to be the guy, to be the name, to be the next in line for Pereira, he didn't really do that in that fight, and yeah, it wasn't really the best of performances from Ankalaev. It wasn't a bad performance, just not a crazy good performance. Chimaev, I got my prediction bang on for that one. I think I said submission round two, but yeah, I said an early submission, and it was crazy. Got him to the ground, fast start straight away, always what he's going to bring, and even when people are doubting and saying he shouldn't do that, again he goes and does it, and to be able to submit to Robert Whittaker is crazy. To be able to do it the way he did was crazy. The injury is disgusting, to be completely honest, and what he did to his jaw and his eyes, yeah, crazy. And how he made Whittaker tap so quickly shows that he actually has to be so strong. And yeah, it's wild. And straight away just getting him to the ground and just being way too much to deal with. The high pace that he sets always is just so difficult to deal with, and now he's wanting that title shot. Probably won't get it next, but it would be interesting to see who he could go on to fight next. I'm up for him fighting any of the big names, to be completely honest. Now, he's definitely staked a claim for him to be around there, and deservingly to be around there. And hopefully he is kind of sticking at the middleweight division. He could move up, but I think he does actually make the middleweight division relatively well, I think. I don't know. Topuria, though, got my prediction right again for that one versus Holloway. It's sad to see Holloway, of course, get knocked out. A legend of the UFC, a great name, a guy who always brings entertainment, and it's just one of them things. Holloway, I think, was tight for the weight, and Topuria hits hard, and he was just continuously waiting and waiting, trying to get in range. Holloway was having success with the strikes in which he was throwing, but like I said, Topuria was just waiting for his right opportunities, and he definitely landed and stunned Holloway earlier, and then carried on and did it again, and then was able to get him out there in very, very impressive fashion. And Topuria has now created such a name for himself now in just 2 fights, going and beating two of the two pretty much best featherweights ever, bar maybe Jose Aldo, and been able to just completely destroy both of them is just crazy. And it wasn't really that long ago, like I said in my prediction, since we were hearing him versus Paddy Pimblett, and Pimblett still would like to fight him, but now to see the way that he's progressed and the way that he's developed and what he's doing now, he's indestructible in that kind of element at the moment. And he's just kind of destroying everyone. And like I say, it seems like he's going to fight Volkanovski next. I respect him for saying that he deserves that fight, Volkanovski. Topuria is saying that Volkanovski deserves the fight, because I definitely think he does deserve the rematch. And that probably will be another entertaining one. But if he's able to get through that again, I would love the Diego Lopez fight. I think that'd be a high action, tough fight. But he's looking, like I say, indestructible at the moment. Topuria, he's in that era alongside the likes of like a Alex Pereira as well. But that is it for today's video. Hope you did enjoy. Like the video if you didn't, like this, subscribe if you are new, and thanks for watching.